There's a trick the best gardeners use every August that feels completely backwards. You cut your tired, floppy perennials down hard, right to a short stub, and about 10 days later they come back with fresh green growth. By September, 6 of them are blooming again like it's June. Bare for a week and a half, then a whole second flush of flowers, just when the garden would otherwise be looking its worst. Because let's be honest about what half your garden looks like this time of year. The catmint, that was a beautiful soft blue cloud back in June, has flopped open in the middle like somebody sat on it. The hardy geraniums have gone yellow at the centre and sprawled out over the path. The salvia is all bare stems, with a couple of sad blooms hanging on at the very top. Everywhere you look, there's that leggy, floppy brown, at the base tiredness that just says August. Most gardeners do nothing about it. They leave it, they tell themselves that's just how a garden looks in late summer, and they wait it out until fall, or they poke a few annuals into the gaps and hope the colour hides the mess. But cutting those tired plants hard, right now, this week, sends them into a completely fresh second act. I know how it sounds. Taking your shears to a plant that already looks like it's suffering feels like exactly the wrong move. Stay with me, because for these particular perennials in early August, it's the difference between an ugly bed and one that looks freshly planted by September. There's just one catch, and it's the whole reason I'm making this now instead of in 3 weeks. The window is this week. Wait until the end of August, and it's too late. I'll explain exactly why in a minute. But that deadline is real, so let's not waste it. First, understand what's actually going on with these plants, because once it clicks, the cutting makes complete sense and it stops feeling scary. A perennial like catmint or salvia has one main job in early summer: grow, flower, and set seed. That's the whole plan. It throws everything it has into that first big bloom in late spring and early summer, and it's glorious. But once those flowers fade and the plant starts putting energy into making seed, it basically thinks its work for the year is done. The stems get long and woody at the base. The center opens up and goes bare. The whole thing gets that floppy, exhausted look. It's not sick. It's just finished with round one, and left to its own devices, it'll coast into fall looking tired. Now for the part that changes everything. When you cut that plant back hard, you interrupt that whole process. You send it a completely different message. Suddenly, all that energy the plant was pouring into seed and into holding up long, tired stems gets redirected down to the base, where a whole crowd of fresh new shoots is waiting. Cutting resets the plant. It triggers a flush of brand new growth from the crown, and for a lot of these perennials, that fresh growth comes with a second round of flowers. Gardeners call this the Chelsea chop when they do it in spring, but the same principle works in August for a completely fresh look heading into fall. So when I tell you to cut your catmint down to 4 inches, I'm not telling you to punish it. I'm telling you to give it permission to start over. And it will. Fast. And here's something worth knowing, because it's the thing that finally made me stop being nervous about this years ago. These plants evolved to be cut. Out in a meadow, a perennial like catmint or Coreopsis would get grazed by deer, flattened by storms, trampled by animals. And it survived all of that precisely because it can regrow from the crown. When you shear it back, you're not doing something unnatural to it. You're doing something it has handled for thousands of years. That ability to bounce back is exactly what you're borrowing when you make the cut. You're not fighting the plant. You're working with it. Now, it is going to look bare for about 10 days. I want to be really honest with you about that, because this is the part that makes people panic and undo their own good work. You make the cut, you step back, and for about a week and a half, you're looking at a sad little stubble of stems and some bare soil. Every instinct tells you that you've made a terrible mistake. You have not. That bare patch is the plant gathering itself. Give it 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, in a cool spell, and you'll see a fuzz of fresh green appear at the base. Then it fills in, then it mounds up, and then it blooms. Do not lose your nerve during those 10 bare days. That's the whole game. And this brings me right back to timing, because timing is everything here. That regrowth needs time. From the day you cut, one of these perennials needs roughly 6 to 8 weeks to push out fresh foliage and get all the way back to flowering. Do the math on that. If you cut in the first week of August, you land your second bloom somewhere around Labor Day and on into September, right when you want it, when the garden would otherwise be looking its worst. Beautiful. But if you wait until the end of August to do this, you've run out of runway. The plant will still push out fresh green leaves because it's tough and it wants to grow. But there won't be enough warm growing season left for that new growth to mature and flower before the cool weather and the first frost shut everything down. You'll get foliage and no flowers. All the work, half the reward. That's the difference a couple of weeks makes. And it's exactly why I keep hammering on this being a right now job. This week, not next month. All right, let me walk you through the specific plants because not everything in your garden wants this treatment, and I want you cutting the right things. There are 6 that respond beautifully, and I'm going to start with the easiest one so you can build a little confidence before you take the shears to your prize plants. Let's start with catmint and its close cousin Nepeta, because honestly, they're the friendliest plant to practice on. You know the one, that soft haze of grey-green foliage with the little lavender blue flowers that the bees absolutely swarm in June. And you also know exactly how it looks by August. It's flopped wide open in the middle, the flowers have mostly faded to a dull brown, and there's a bare hole in the centre where all the good foliage used to be. Catmint does this every single year. It's not you. Here's what you do. Gather the whole floppy mound up in one hand if you can, almost like you're grabbing a ponytail, and then take your shears and just cut the whole thing back to about 4 inches. Don't be delicate about it. Don't pick through it stem by stem. Just cut the whole mound down like you're giving it a buzz cut. Gathering it first makes the cut faster and gives you a cleaner line, and it means all that trimmed material comes away in one handful instead of scattering through the bed. It looks alarming for a few days. I won't pretend otherwise. You'll have a little cluster of pale cut stems and some bare brown soil where a beautiful blue cloud used to be. But catmint is one of the fastest rebounders in the whole garden. Within about 3 weeks, you'll have a perfect fresh mound of that soft, grey-green foliage again, tighter and neater than before, and it'll throw a whole second flush of those little lavender blue flowers right through September. The bees come back for round 2. The scent comes back too, that lovely soft minty smell when you brush past it, and your border looks tidy and full instead of collapsed in the middle. If you only cut back one thing after watching this, make it your catmint. It's the most forgiving, it's the fastest, and once you see how well it works on the catmint, you'll trust the whole process for everything else. Now that you've got a feel for it, let's talk about salvia, because this is one people get wrong all the time. When salvia finishes its first bloom, most gardeners go along and snip off the individual spent flower spikes, thinking that's enough. Deadheading, we call it. And it helps a little. But it is not the same thing, and it won't give you what we're after. By August, your salvia is mostly bare woody stems with a tuft of green up top, and maybe a stray bloom or 2. What salvia actually wants is the same hard cutback. Take the whole plant down to about 4 inches, right down into that leafy zone near the base where you can see little new shoots forming. And that's the real trick with salvia. Get down close and look before you cut. You'll almost always spot tiny fresh leaves already forming low on the plant, waiting for their chance. Cut just above those. You're not removing a healthy plant. You're clearing the tired old growth off the top of the new growth that's already on its way. Once you learn to look for those little shoots at the base, you'll never be nervous about cutting salvia again. You can see with your own eyes that the comeback is already loaded and ready. Give it a few weeks and salvia comes roaring back with brand new spikes of those rich purple and blue flowers standing up straight and full, right into early September. The difference between a salvia that got a proper cut and one that just got its flower tips snipped off is night and day. One looks freshly planted, upright and dense and blooming. The other looks like it's limping to the finish line on bare woody legs. Same plant, same August, completely different result. And the only difference is whether you are willing to make the real cut. And now we get to the big one, the plant that gives you the most dramatic before and after of anything in this whole video. Hardy geraniums. And I don't mean the potted geraniums with the big red flowers you buy in spring. I mean true hardy cranesbill geraniums, the perennial ones with the pretty five-petaled flowers in pink and purple and blue that carpet the front of the border in early summer. In June, hardy geraniums are one of the loveliest things in the garden, and in August, they are one of the ugliest. This is the classic August flop. The whole plant sprawls out flat, smothering whatever's next to it, and the center goes yellow and brown and crispy, while the outer stems flail across the path. Every year, gardeners look at that mess and assume the plant is dying or done. It is neither. It is just begging for a haircut. So give it one. And with hardy geraniums, you can be really bold. Cut the entire plant hard, right down to about 3 or 4 inches, all of it, the yellow bits and the still green bits together. Chop the whole thing. I promise you it looks drastic for about a week. And then something wonderful happens. Fresh green leaves start pushing up from the base, and within a few weeks that ratty sprawling mess has been completely replaced by a neat, tidy, low mound of clean new foliage. It looks like a different plant, and for a lot of the hardy geranium varieties, especially the ones like Roseanne and the Johnson's blue types, you'll get a whole second round of flowers on top of that fresh foliage, carrying you right through September and often longer. If you do nothing else from this video, do this to your hardy geraniums. Nothing rewards the cut more dramatically. You'll walk out 10 days after you're brave enough to make the cut, and you genuinely won't believe it's the same plant that was collapsing over your path. And there's a bonus you might not expect. All those sprawling outer stems that were smothering the plants next to them, gone. Suddenly, the perennials on either side, the ones the geranium had been crushing all summer, get their light and their space back too. One cut, and you've tidied up half that corner of the bed at once. If you're finding this useful, take a second and subscribe. I share practical, no-nonsense garden tips like this every week, timed to exactly what you should be doing in your beds that month. Next week, I'll be walking through which perennials to divide in early fall, so your garden comes back twice as full next spring for free. All right, back to the shears. Let's talk about threadleaf Coreopsis, because this one's a little different in texture, but responds just as well. Coreopsis is that fine, ferny, almost airy plant covered in cheerful little daisy-like flowers, usually golden yellow, sometimes pink or cream in the newer varieties. In early summer, it's a cloud of color. By August, it's a tangle of dead flower heads and tired foliage, and because the leaves are so fine and thread-like, you cannot possibly deadhead it one flower at a time. You'd be out there all day and still not finish, so don't even try. Just shear the lot. Take your shears or even your hedge trimmers if it's a big patch, and cut the entire plant back by about 2/3, down to that low, fresh growth. It's fast, it's satisfying, and Coreopsis loves it. There's something genuinely enjoyable about shearing a Coreopsis, honestly. You go from a brown, tangled mess to a clean little green hedgehog of a plant in about 30 seconds, and it feels like tidying a whole corner of the garden in a single sweep. Within a few weeks, the whole plant rebounds into a fresh mound of that fine green foliage, and then bursts back into a cloud of yellow flowers right around Labor Day. This is one where the shearing approach really shines, because trying to tidy it any other way is a lost cause. You would be out there for an hour with tweezers. Cut it all, walk away, and let it surprise you. And a quick word about all the material you're cutting off, because you'll end up with a surprising pile of it. As long as the plants are healthy with no disease, all those trimmings go straight in the compost. Chop them up a bit if they're stemmy so they break down faster, and you've turned this whole job into next year's soil food. Nothing wasted. The one exception is anything that looks diseased or mildewed, and there's a bit of that around in a humid August. That goes in the trash, not the compost, so you're not spreading problems back into your beds next spring. And finally, spiderwort. This is the plant almost everyone gives up on, and I want to rescue it for you. Spiderwort has those lovely three-petaled flowers, usually in purple or blue, and grassy, strappy foliage. It blooms beautifully in early summer, and then it does something that makes people hate it. It goes yellow, really yellow. The foliage turns and flops and gets ratty, and generally looks like something died in the corner of your bed. Most folks assume it's a lost cause, and either rip it out, or just look away in shame for the rest of the summer. Don't. Spiderwort is one of the most rewarding plants to cut back of the whole bunch. Take the entire plant right down to the ground or close to it, just a couple of inches. Chop off all that yellow, floppy mess completely. It looks like you've removed the plant entirely, and that's fine. Water it and wait. Spiderwort comes back with fresh, clean, upright green foliage, looking crisp and healthy again, and very often it'll give you a second round of those pretty flowers in early fall. The plant you were about to give up on becomes one of the best-looking things in your September garden. All it needed was the courage to cut it to the ground. So that's your 6. Every one of them answers a hard August cutback with fresh foliage, and for most, a full second bloom by September. Not bad for one afternoon with the shears. There's a right way to actually make the cut, and doing it properly gives the plant the best possible start. First, use clean, sharp shears. A clean cut heals faster and cleaner than a ragged tear, and sharp blades mean you're slicing through the stems instead of crushing them. If your shears are dull or gunked up from last season, give them a quick wipe and a sharpen before you start. Your plants will thank you. Second, commit to the 4 inches. I know it's tempting to hedge your bets and only take off the top third. Leave a little more just in case. Resist that. A timid cut gives you a timid result. You want to cut low enough to trigger that fresh growth from the base, and for most of these plants, that means down to about 4 inches, sometimes lower for the spiderwort and the hardy geraniums. Look for the little new shoots forming near the ground and cut just above them. Be bold. The whole point is to reset the plant, and a half-hearted trim doesn't do that. Third, water and feed after you cut. You've just asked the plant to put on a big push of new growth, so give it what it needs to do the job. Water it in well right after cutting, especially in the August heat, and a light feed with a balanced fertilizer or a top dressing of compost gives that regrowth a real boost. Nothing heavy, just a little support. And if you can, make the cut in the cool of the morning or evening rather than under a blazing noon sun, or pick a mild overcast day. A freshly cut plant is a touch vulnerable for its first few days, and cutting into the heat of the afternoon just makes it work harder. Think of it as a good meal and a rest after a hard workout. That's it. Clean shears, 4 inches, water and a light feed. Takes you maybe 10 minutes per plant, and most of that is just deciding to be brave. Here are a few things the average August cutback video never mentions, and they're what separate a decent result from a spectacular one. The first is to stagger your cuts instead of doing everything in one afternoon. If you shear every perennial in the bed on the same day, the whole garden goes bare at once, and you're staring at a full 10 days of stubble everywhere you look. Instead, cut half your plants this week and the other half next week. Now the bed always has something full and green in it while the freshly cut plants recover behind them. You get the same September payoff, but you never have to look at a completely bare border in the meantime. For a flower gardener who actually sits out and enjoys the view, that difference is everything. The second thing is knowing which of these 6 give you a true second bloom versus which mainly give you fresh foliage, because it shapes where you spend your effort. Catmint, Salvia, and the hardy geraniums are your reliable rebloomers. Cut those and you can genuinely expect flowers again by September. Coreopsis usually reblooms well too. Spiderwort is a little less predictable on the flowers, but always rewards you with clean new foliage, which in its case is more than half the battle, since the yellowing leaves were the real eyesore. So if you're short on time and want the biggest flower payoff, start with the catmint, the salvia, and the geraniums. And the third one, which is my favorite trick for a flower border, is to tuck a few fast annuals into the gaps right after you cut. A handful of cosmos, some zinnias, or a few trailing calabricoa dropped into the bare spots will flower within a couple of weeks and carry the color while your perennials rebuild underneath. By the time the annuals are peaking, the perennials are catching up behind them, and your bed never has a dull moment. It's a small thing, but it turns the bare window from a problem into an opportunity to add a fresh splash of color you didn't have before. One more thing before you head out, so you know what to expect and don't panic. Here's how it goes day by day. For the first 10 days or so, it looks bad. Bare stubble, some open soil, and that nagging feeling that you've ruined everything. This is completely normal. This is exactly what it's supposed to look like. Do not touch it. Do not second guess it, just keep it watered. And one small tip that saves a lot of heartbreak: push a little plant marker or a short stake in beside each spot you cut. In that bare stretch, a fresh cutback looks exactly like an empty gap, and it is astonishing how often a helpful spouse or a weekend volunteer decides to be useful and digs out the dead plant or plants something new right on top of it. A marker tells everyone, including future you, that something wonderful is on its way up. Around day 10 to 14, you'll start to see it, a soft fuzz of fresh green appearing right at the base of those cut stems. That's the plant coming back, and once you see it, the relief is wonderful. From there, it moves quickly. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, that green fuzz fills in and mounds up into a full, tidy plant of clean new foliage. And then, right around the end of August into September, the flowers start. By Labor Day, these plants look freshly planted, full, green, blooming, and completely transformed from the tired mess they were a month before. That's the payoff, and it's worth every one of those nervous bare days. Before you run out there and start cutting everything in sight, though, I need to tell you what not to do this to. Because this treatment is for a specific type of plant, and it can genuinely harm the wrong ones. Do not hard cut your woody shrubs this way. Things like roses, hydrangeas, lavender at the base, or any true shrub with woody stems. Those have completely different pruning needs and their own proper seasons, and chopping them to 4 inches in August can do real damage or cost you next year's flowers. This trick is for herbaceous perennials, the soft-stemmed plants that die back to the ground anyway, not for anything woody. Second, leave the one-time bloomers alone. Some perennials, like peonies or a lot of the ornamental grasses, bloom once and simply don't rebloom no matter what you do. Cutting them back hard now just removes their foliage for no benefit and can weaken them. If a plant isn't on my list of 6 and you're not sure whether it reblooms, the safe move is to leave it be this year and watch how it behaves. And third, think about your pollinators and your seed heads. If a plant is still actively flowering and feeding the bees and butterflies, or if it's forming seed heads that the birds will eat over winter, or that you want for next year, you might choose to leave it standing on purpose. There's a real value to that. The August cutback is a tool, not a rule. Use it on the tired, finished, floppy plants that have nothing left to offer this round, and let the ones still doing good work keep doing it. So let me leave you with all of it in one breath. Right now, in the first week of August, half your perennials look tired and finished. Most gardeners will just accept that and spend the next 6 weeks looking at a sad, floppy, brown at the base garden until fall finally arrives. But you don't have to be one of them. Take one afternoon this week. Grab your sharp shears, cut your catmint, your nepeta, your salvia, your hardy geraniums, your threadweave coreopsis, and your spiderwort, down to about 4 inches. Water them, give them a light feed, and then find the patience to leave them alone through 10 bare-looking days. Because on the other side of those 10 days is fresh green growth, and on the other side of that is a full second bloom, and by Labor Day, you'll have a garden that looks like it was just planted, while everyone else's is limping towards September. Just remember the one thing that matters most. This is a this-week job. The regrowth needs 6 to 8 weeks to bloom, and if you wait until late August, the season runs out from under you and you'll get leaves but no flowers. So don't set this aside for later. Later is the one thing that doesn't work here. Go give your garden a haircut. Then send me a photo in a month, because I promise you won't believe the difference. If you want to know exactly which perennials to divide and move this fall so next year's garden comes back bigger and fuller for free, that video is right here on the screen. Go watch it next, and let's get your garden set up for its best year yet.